Hello and welcome to Weaving Dreams into Reality. This podcast is a passionate exploration of life's possibilities through a spiritual lens. I'm your host, Anya Sakin, filmmaker, best-selling author, non-binary shaman, and person with lived experience of mental illness. Join me here each week for insights, inspirations, and interviews with people sharing real-life stories of bringing their dreams to life and how they did it. And be sure to leave your comments, inspirations, and questions, and we may feature them on an upcoming episode. And the storytelling was taken from the circles around the fire by the shaman. As entertainment and plays and books and throughout time, pretty much in the world, have been sponsored by those ruling elite who have the resources that do what they, I guess, can to control the narratives, and they have suppressed and only paid for, essentially, and supported certain narratives in plays, in literature, in films. It has been like Hollywood. That's why Hollywood, one of the existing systems have been crumbling, because the 1%, if you will. I mean, I'm not a big conspiracy person, but it is a fact. There are wealthy people who have certain agendas who fund things, right? And that's not some kind of crazy out there theory. They have controlled the narrative of our story. Oh my God. They have controlled the narrative of our story since this whole hierarchical system of control has been around, and corrupted and twisted to suit the agendas of the people who want us to stay small and scared and feeling that we are helpless and insignificant. That has been the story that was told, because that was what was supported, and what was through those same vehicles made popular, and people would uphold toe the so-called party line with regards to those narratives and support them. And that is also what's in the world's religions as well. The dogma part, the untruth of that is has fettered the truth at the core of all religions, which is the divine oneness of which we all are, and as such have infinite power and infinite ability to manifest in life. And part of my journey in this life is to return us through my work and through the collaboration with others. There's others on this planet doing it too. To return the narrative, to serve the people, to serve all of us. Because now we are now reclaiming our birthright as sovereign beings that are the divine oneness incarnate. That religions would have us say is blasphemy, or whatever word is, I was exposed to the Christian religion for when I was a child, and I mean, I also followed Tibetan Buddhism, which was something that resonated with me for many years as well. But ultimately, all the religions point to very similar things. They also have certain gendered roles. A person should do this or shouldn't do that. They have certain expectations on people being, and all of our stories have talked about noble sacrifice and giving it all up for your family or for your country. And, saying that greed is wrong, that wanting to, be famous is wrong, and things like that. All of these little tripwires that go off whenever a person starts to follow the things, and even sexual union, sacred union, has been reduced to this emotionless sport almost in almost all of our films, to varying degrees. I mean, I'm not saying that there's never been anything done that has been on par with, close to at least, the truth of sacred union, but I would say like 98 to 99% of things have not. And all of the vehicles through, and also like aspiring for to do the things that you really love in your life, and then having to, that story where you have to quote unquote face reality, which was a part of the story of my narrative, of my life's narrative. And our lives are our stories, but what we have failed to understand is we are the ones who write them, not our institutions, not even the governments or anything like that. We write our own narrative based on our response to our every waking moment. And the beauty of it is that we can transform it at any waking moment and be. So much is just flooding in right now. And I know that this is a massive portal of transformation across the planet right now. The astrologically, and if you are a person who does not like astrology or does not resonate with it, I encourage you to explore it, or haven't resonated with it. I encourage you to explore it. It's a very powerful tool of self-understanding. I don't feel astrology as this, predictive model that's going to tell every single moment of every nuance of everyone's life and determine things. No. It is a forecast, a weather forecast that can change, sometimes based on the universe's and human decisions and vibrations and things like that. There are so many cogs and wheels in everything that can transform. That doesn't. It's not rigid. It's not even fixed. But what I'm saying is that it's not something that a lot of people have thought of astrology perhaps as this thing you read in the newspaper that says, "Oh, today don't buy stocks. You have to, or whatever. Like don't do these things, or all of these forecasts of doom and gloom and whatever." That this strange thing that people with a big poofy hat and a crystal ball will try and extort money from you for, if you know what I mean. What it really is a sort of forecast of the energies that are around, and how we respond to them and how we experience them is based on how we experience ourselves and the stories that we weave into our own narrative of our life. And I'll share a personal example. Financially, we all have our challenges and our strengths and the things that flow in our lives almost effortlessly, and things that don't. And one of the things for me, has been, I was born to an unwed mom in the 60s who was from a family who were impoverished. They had no running water. They had no electricity when she was growing up. They lived in the bush. And yes, there are people of this, background that have that. There are people who are dirt poor in Canada and who live in the woods and stuff like that, or have been. That was in the 1960s when I was born, in 66. And it was that way. And then my birth father was also very poor. Oh, pardon me. And anyway, so long story short, my birth mom had to give me up. She was, in college, she was living with her boyfriend and very naive, didn't know about the ways of the world, and ended up getting pregnant twice without any ways of supporting the child. And back then, things were very different than they are now. Anyway. So she gave birth to me and instantly, at the moment I was born, gave me up for adoption. So I was with what's some kind of a children's aid society or something like that. And I was adopted into a family that had lived through, my mom and dad both lived through the Great Depression. My father was in a concentration camp during the Second World War. My mom was a refugee. She had to flee Poland because some enemy forces or whatever literally she had less than 24 hours to leave her home, and she had to leave pretty much everything behind. And because she became a refugee, traveled through Yugoslavia down into Egypt and ended up settling for several years in Tel Aviv, I believe it was, and then by way of Tel Aviv to London, and then London, England to Canada, to Toronto. And anyway, what I'm saying here is there's a narrative of in both families of poverty and a lot of fear around money. My father was very good with his money, and he rose from literally absolute pennilessness with nothing, no education, no family, when he was liberated from concentration camp. And he rose from that state of literally penniless, countryless. As when he was liberated, he was in Italy, I believe, and that was during the Iron Curtain or whatever. He ended up during communist times in Poland, and he ended up when he demobilized. He was picked up by the Polish division of the British Army or something like that. He ended up in Italy. And from there, when the army was disbanded, he was given a choice, and he chose but because he was a refugee, he had no family. His connection with all of his family members, he didn't know if they were alive or not, so he was on his own. He was given an opportunity to study whatever he wanted in England, which he did. And he rose from literally that moment of being absolutely penniless, without a job, and without even having finished his high school before the war. He finished his high school, and then he went to university and became an architect. From that point, he rose to become the chief architect of all of Canada for the Toronto Dominion Bank. And, it was a beautiful, when they had an architect's department. Anyway, so he went from nothing to having a beautiful house in Don Mills, which is a reasonably nice area in Toronto, and a beautiful home that he built for my mom and myself. And yeah, anyway, so he was amazing with his money, but there's so much fear around it. And as a child, you're pretty much just a little psychic sponge, and you take in everything that's in the people around you to some degree, and some of it stays, some of it goes, whatever, but you absorb a lot of stuff. And so financial stuff and money management and resources and the frequency of fear that I have held around it. And I had this strange sort of love-hate relationship with it, and this sort of not even, the word laissez-faire doesn't even describe it really. It was more I see it now as more of just of a plain out rebellion of like, because my father was so strict with his money and with what he would buy me and when he would buy it for me, and there was all kinds of things around it. It's this whole narrative around whenever I asked for anything, there was all of this like smackdown pretty much to you can't ask for something that's too expensive because it's just, we can't afford it, even though we could. It was just, and my father knew we could, but I mean, not knew. Sorry, that's not fair. My father was absolutely able to, but his narrative, the story that he was telling himself of his wealth and what he could and couldn't do, was very, because of what his background, because what had happened, he was very good with, but to the point of being afraid of money, losing his money. But he provided for my mom and I beautifully. My mom, because they adopted me back then, she literally was not allowed to work because that was a condition of the adoption, that she had to stay home with me. And she gave up her work. She was a brilliant... Anyway, that's another rabbit hole. I won't go down right now. Anyway, the long story short, there was a lot of fear around money and around spending it and around it going away. He was always scared that it would go away, all of it. It never did. There was one point that his story that he was telling himself, and I'm not saying this, that he was telling himself this deliberately, consciously, as something that he wanted to perpetuate, because obviously no one would. This is a subconscious narrative that was a thread in his life that was woven into every part of his experience, because he never completely transcended it. Anyway, so there's this fear, and my response growing up to that feeling of fear and not wanting to spend and not, like, you can't be frivolous with your money and stuff like that. That's what he was he ruled his money with an iron fist. And I'm not, like, he and I were opposites of in polarity, because I was very much, whenever I had money, I spent it, because we carry, and as far as children go, a lot of the time, we carry our parents' disowned energies as well. Sometimes in a way of rebelling against it, and sometimes by way of just taking it in and making it part of our narrative. And so I had this in me, this internal battle of the part of me that wanted to enjoy life, spend money, and do the things I really genuinely wanted to do. And so I did them, and I ended up a lot of the time doing so in a way, because of all the fear, and because I had my own, stuff energetically to learn and to heal frivolously. I not heal frivolously, but I used the money I had frivolously to a great degree, and I really did not take the responsibility with it, with my bills, with things like that. When I first moved out, my father tried to teach me to work with my money and stuff like that, but there was always all of this baggage. Like, he would always project onto me that all I could ever do was find a guy and marry a guy who would support me, because I had no clue how to do it myself. And that I was no good with money, and blah, 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 blah. Back then, and especially my dad carried a lot of the misogynistic mindset that said women can't do certain things, or men only can do them, or whatever, the other way around too, in other things, but whatever. So moving forward, as I grew up, I had a really unhealthy relationship with money, with managing my resources as well. And my journey through this has to really, in this case, I feel my guides and my guidance is saying that I'm here I went through all of that for, a reason, as we all do with every one of our life lessons. There's every biggest struggle that we've ever had holds within it the pearl that of our own transformation. When we can reach in and pry open the fear and the shell around the experience of fear, when we can reach inside that and open it up and release it and heal it, that's when the pearl falls into your hand. And with mine, it has been the deepest narrative beneath all of that was trusting the universe has my back. And that is something that in religious teachings, there's all kinds of fear that if you don't do everything perfectly, if you aren't self-sacrificial enough, if you have aspirations for whatever kinds of like career or family or wealth or whatever, that it's bad, it's wrong, it's sinful. And the biggest thing that religions mistake and really do an immense disservice, or, well, again, like anything, it's a part of our human collective narrative that we are healing. And there is no bad or evil in this. All it is the forces of antagonistic forces that wait when you're working out at the gym. If you use it with the intention of building muscle and seeing that it has its benefits for you, that even though it's uncomfortable, as in real life when you're working out, you're making micro tears in your muscle when you're exercising, especially to the point where you start to build the muscle. It creates those micro tears and things like that, those uncomfortable experiences that we have along the way while we are moving towards that goal of physical fitness and building the muscles and the bone density and stuff like that we those are the things that create the strength that we need to transcend the past, to really embrace our stories and see that everything has the potential within it to move us forward when we can see it from that perspective. And in my case, trusting the universe that it has my back and that I always am divinely supported and guided in every breath, every movement, every step I take, everything that I do, especially financially. Including financially. And over the past, I don't know, I don't want to give an exact figure, but say 15, 20 years, something like that, has been a massive shift where I can see now and appreciate when I'm responsible with my money, how beautifully things flow, how things, I feel, I know it's I don't have this volatility of, oh no, I've spent everything, where am I going to get the next whatever? And that knowing that the bills that I'm paying bring benefits. I mean, the taxes that I pay help build roads. They help maintain sewer systems, and I have garbage collection and recycling and the green bin thing where they compost the wet garbage, and there's all kinds of beautiful things that result from it. That now that I am aligning with and living from a place of balanced responsibility, because I used to spend, and we some people jokingly refer to it as retail therapy. Did I give myself a whole lot of therapy? Oh yeah. Anyway, so in my past, I have been financially irresponsible quite a bit. There's a car alarm there. But now, I'm going to pause this just because it's kind of loud. But now that I am not just doing it out of a sense of obligation, I can actually do it with a sense of appreciation. The more beauty I'm seeing in all of my narrative. And, we all have our struggles. Yours may not be financial. Yours may be relational. Maybe you just can't seem to get people to understand you, or your spouse, or your child, or something like that. They're just like, you're at loggerheads and you don't know what to do. We all have our different challenges. The muscles that we are building varies from person to person. So what I was going to say about this whole financial thing with mine, when I started to forgive myself, to recognize that I had been out of balance in that part of my life, and for the vast majority of the years that I spent on this planet, until that point, up until, maybe about 5-10 years, something like that now, maybe a little more, I was out of balance, and these energies were chaotic in my life. But even so, every single time I grounded myself and came back into awareness of my guidance and started to, and honestly, it wasn't just out of laziness or I just want to spend all of my money on things I enjoy. I was terrified because I felt the fear that my father had when he was, quote unquote, responsible with his money. And I didn't want that. I saw the fights that my mom and dad had over money, and I didn't want that. So in a way, and I'm not saying this was something that was logical or like laudable, whatever response to it. But my response to it was, money is scary. I don't want it. I'm going to and my father, and I'm not blaming him. This is just like the way that he did things, because he felt in his heart somehow he was helping me. Excuse me. In doing so, he was like, sometimes he would be drinking a little bit, and he would, and again, he was a good guy, good person. He loved my mom and I like crazy, and he was a good dad. He was also human, and he had a drinking problem. I mean, cut the guy some slack. He witnessed one of his friends get killed right next to him in the concentration camp, and he was in there for a couple of years or whatever. He saw things that no living being ever should have to see. Ever. So he drank. But he was very functional. And he controlled it very effectively, especially in his later life. When I was growing up, he used the force of his will to overcome, because he was full-blown alcoholic at one point. He loved piano, and he couldn't drink and play piano because it interfered with his ability to do so. So he sobered himself up on his own, not through some kind of 12-step thing. He did it on his own. And I'm not saying this 12-step thing is courageous. It's an amazing thing to do if you have that problem. But my dad did it on his own. That's the strength of his character. Anyway, wanted to say that as a preface to what I'm saying now. He would say to me that when he was drunk, take advantage of this moment because I'm feeling generous. And let's go get this thing that you've wanted for a long time. So it was like that was built into my narrative that, again, it was what it was. My dad loved me, and he was human, like we all are. So we would go out and buy these things that I really, really wanted on these moments when my dad was drunk, and his so-called fear was abating, and he was like, because he wanted these things for me. I know he did. Anyway, my narrative was that money is scarce. When you have it, spend it on the things that you love. Hold on to those things that you love, because those bursts of opportunity are rare and very specific. If you don't take advantage of them, you'll lose out. And that was built into my narrative until, like, even right now, there are parts of me that are like, oh, wow, yeah, that's so true. That's what it was. I released that. I released that. I released that. And now, looking back on those, on my life, I am really, really grateful for the resources I have that do pay for these things. Being aware now of all of the beautiful systems that support me and all of the beautiful people whether I've physically have ever seen them or will see them in my life or not, they're there supporting me. They're there collecting the trash. They're there mowing the grass in the park next to us. They're there building the roads and rebuilding bridges and things like that when they need maintenance. They're there when the sewage is being treated, the water is being purified, all of that. We don't necessarily think about these things, and I certainly didn't. What I'm saying in this case right now is once I started focusing on how responsibility can be a beautiful thing, and that there's a crow outside, or a raven outside, they're croaking just now. I don't know if you can hear it on the recording. That's one of my spirit guides. Anyway, the responsibility is a beautiful thing. I think that one might have come through. He went, oh. Anyway. Sorry, getting digressing here because I love those things. They're so adorable and they're so smart. The first big ripple because I was doing my work. I was studying with so many different people on money, on healing that, and on sacred love, on all the things that I really wanted to build into my life. That at the time were really not in the physical. It's because, like everything, it starts in the etherics, goes down into the mental, emotional, then down into the psychological, whatever, all those, and then eventually down into the physical, where it manifests in your reality. And the first beautiful, immense portal of understanding was when I was guided to move to an apartment from a townhouse. I was guided to go and move into a townhouse that was, and this, I'm not saying you should do this as some kind of a financial advice. Absolutely not. This was what my guidance was telling me. And even though the human in me was like, what are you doing? I moved into a townhouse because I wanted a townhouse. I wanted a house of my own, right? I wanted a backyard and I wanted a balcony when I found out I was pregnant. So I moved into this townhouse and I was like, I can't afford this, or maybe I can't, whatever. But at the time I was not, I was still very much in the process of beginning my healing journey. But somehow I was guided to move from the old apartment that I was in. I think I had, anyway, yeah, I was guided to move from an apartment that I was living in, the very first place where I started the healing journey, the big time, when the turnaround started, when I met, anyway, going to too much of a rabbit hole here on this, my apologies. Well, whatever. So I moved into the townhouse, and that trust in the universe, because I was guided, that trust in the universe sent ripples. And I want you to hear this lovingly with all of my heart. I want you to hear this story so that you can map it onto your own life and use whatever wisdom is here, because I want everyone to be free. I want everyone to live from the state of the truth of their being, of their spirit, and all of the abundance and all of the beauty and everything that the divine, which you are, holds in its heart for you, its unconditionally loving heart for you. I sent ripples into the universe of trust in following my guidance. It was a leap of faith, my first not my first in my life, but whatever. This was big. Back then, I was like, this is nuts, whatever, but I wanted that place. I loved that place. And I grew so much within I moved there, my son was born in 2007. I moved there in February, which is a month before he was born. That place was a huge crucible of transformation for me, the beginning of it. So many things happened. Fast forward, I moved in, I started doing spiritual work. I eventually, when I was there, I ended up studying shamanism. It was when I was in that place, living in that townhouse. And so much transformed. And then after a certain point, I was guided to move to an apartment by the same property owner. Moved into an apartment building because I was guided to downsize. And trusting the guidance, I did it. And I found a beautiful place and lived there for, I think, 2 years. Things started to accelerate massively. By 2017, I started doing a lot of work with sacred love, and things just started to click. And this was in the spiritual. All of this stuff, all of the work I was doing was in the spiritual plane. Meditation, healing work with shamanic practitioners, mindset work, meditation, yoga. All of these things, they were churning up the energies in the etherics. And then, at first, and then I started going. Sorry, I was going to drink a bit of water. My mouth is very dry. So it started in the etherics, and then I started with the mindset work, which was the mental emotional. And the shamanic work was with all the soul fragmentation and things like that, and that helped to build a stable foundation on which for me to rebuild myself after the total mental breakdown. Anyway, fast forward to 2017, I'm living in this beautiful, this little apartment. I downsized. I brought my son and I went to this place, and I was doing a lot of work. I was really in the spiritual energy, loving so many things, and doing affirmations, but mostly it was the living in what Derek Rydell refers to as living in the feeling tone. And what that means is what I experienced of it was you keep animating in your experience and focusing on your attentions on. I mean, I'm not saying that, the toilet overflows, you don't go and plunge it, or is about to overflow, you don't go plunge it. Just staying only in the etherics. Pay attention to it and take care of what you need to do, the essentials. But even if something so-called negative is happening in your experience, you deal with it, and then you return back to focusing on, you deal with whatever that problem was, the immediate thing that needs to get done, and then you return to the space of inhabiting what it is that you love, the frequency of what you love, and doing that, building that into your experience. Even if it starts off, if you wanted to change your career, say that's what you want to do, but you're like, you have a full-time job and you can't, just quit it suddenly and just whatever, do the thing you want to do. You start by baby steps. You start in the evenings. You start studying something. You start immersing yourself in the world of and the energies of what it is that you want to welcome into your life. And as you do that, you become a vibrational match for it. It becomes your new frequency, your new inhabited frequency. And what you focus on expands in your reality. What you focus on becomes your reality. And how you respond to what you focus on also it flavors and becomes your reality. And when I was now I was at this place where I was seeing the universe helping me. I was seeing and focusing on studying the things that I love, the things that I want in my reality. I want this relationship. I want this kind of home. I want this kind of career, this kind of frequency. And in the fall of 2017, late fall, I think it was October or something like that, I was in a very deep state of alignment with what I loved and wanted in my life. And I was, spending my days, whatever available time I had, learning about this stuff, embodying it, meditating on it, seeing images of it, vision boarding, whatever. Everything I could do to focus on that and live as if immersing myself in the world of what that is, with the intention of enjoying it, and of finding ways of bringing it into my life, step by baby step. It wasn't, and then what happened in the fall of 2017, I was living in this apartment because I was told to downsize by my guidance. My mom and her best friend called me, and I remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing. I was sitting at my computer. I was working on a story that I was writing. My mom and her best friend said, okay, because my mom, and this was, my mom's mental health was declining to a degree that she couldn't really live on her own anymore. She wasn't taking her medications and things like that anyway. And, not eating and stuff like that. And she was living in a beautiful, beautiful condo overlooking a golf course and stuff like that. And it had beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows and stuff like that. Anyway, so she interestingly bought that condo after my father's passing in 2012, right in the same year that I began studying shamanism. Anyway, fast forward back again. So here I am, 2017, and my mom and her best friend were calling me. Because she was very, very business oriented, very, very. Not my mom, but my mom's best friend. She was like an executive and self-made, and she was a solo parent for many years. And I admired her tremendously at the time. And so anyway, so your mom and I, this is my mom's best friend. Your mom and I have decided that instead of waiting for her to pass to inherit the money and having to go through all the legal crap and whatnot, we've decided to, because my mom had to sell her condo and move to an assisted care facility, that she was going to buy my son and I a townhouse or a condo. And I was in shock, literally. I was shaking. I started crying in a good way, and then I was like, "But can she afford it? Whatever." But the fear came in, but then I was like, "No, it's okay. She's fine. Don't worry about it." And press fast forward on the thing a little bit here on the storyline. I was looking around for all these different places and condos, I was thinking like, originally we were thinking condo apartment kind of thing, like what she had, because I loved her place. It was beautiful. But the universe I had put ripples out into the universe. So what ended up happening was, we were looking in Toronto, and Toronto, the prices were, for the night, for what I wanted, there was nothing that was even remotely fitting for, there was no two-bedroom condos, because my son and I, and like nothing that would fit. I was getting to the point where I was like frustrated. And it was funny because we started looking outside the city. And there's this, small towns like, there was this one place in this town called Ajax. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, I've never thought of Ajax. It looks like, because we'd always driven by and it looked kind of like a bit of an armpit, But I discovered when we started looking here that there were some beautiful places. And there was one that was right by the lake. It was a townhouse. It was a condo. Not townhouse, sorry. It was a condo, like an apartment-sized condo. It was a nice place. But it ended up not working out. But I was like, wow, this place is beautiful. And then there was this one place that we kept seeing the listing for, and I was like, no, that place, that place looks like that. No way, I would never want to live there. It's too this, that, or the other thing. It was just whatever. I can't remember what the specifics of it. But then the listing kept coming up. And then one day, and I was like, no, I don't want to see that. I didn't want to go see it. We went and saw a unit in this townhouse complex just down the road from me, from where our place is now. And I was like, this particular townhouse is But I mean, I like the idea of I was rekindled my romance, if you will, with having a townhouse. And like a week later or something like that, I saw the listing for this place again. And I was like, because by this point we needed to, because my mom's place was closing, and we needed to make the purchase. And I was like, okay, fine. Because I kept seeing this listing. Fine, let's go see it. And the second, I kid you not, the second I walked through the front door, I knew this place would be our home, our next home. And everything went, like everything... we faced a whole bunch of obstacles. But every single one of them, every single hurdle, when I focused on what I needed to focus on, took responsibilities, and did the things, every single one of them, including a huge financial leap, like in terms of like responsibility, every single thing worked out. And somehow circumstances conspired in to constantly make sure that once I committed to something and took the steps for it, every single one of the things, every component was put in place. And I was carrying huge debt, all kinds of stuff, and like all of it just it became consolidated, and it became manageable, and it became, all of these terrifying things that once were sort of flailing around in the wind, if you will, came down into a monthly payment. And right now, I'm at another threshold, and in my story, where something else is expanding, and I can feel the other dreams, the other things that I have worked with in my etherics and my emotional, mental, and now my physical. They're emerging, they're dawning into my reality now. So what I'm saying is, with love and with the ultimate desire for everyone to find their freedom through their own guidance, their own North Star. That you hear the story that I'm sharing with you and understand that if I can do it, you can do it. And if you're listening to this right now, it's for a reason, because you're being guided by your own inner guidance system, your own inner. Derek Gradell, I like quoting him because he has a lot of very quote-worthy things. He referred to it as your God positioning system. I love that. Your God positioning GPS. When you can turn that on, and I mean it's sorry, not turn that on, it's always on. When you turn your attention to it and ask it, it will always steer you in the right course. And whether you hit the North Star every single moment of every single day, that you're like it just flows automatically. If it doesn't flow automatically into exactly what you want in the instant you want it, just know that every so-called obstacle that you face is in fact a weight that you're picking up and a muscle that you're building using that energy. You are listening to this at this exact right time, at this exact right place, and you are always and ever in exactly the right place, doing exactly the right thing, even though that may fly in the face of logic. It's the truth, because you can only start where you are, and where you are is exactly perfect. And with every breath, with every movement of your hand, every heartbeat, every step that you take, you have the opportunity to transform your life. And focus first on the etherics and clear that. Do the work. I know that there are things like Reiki. In my case, I've done what has been hugely helpful for me. The big ones were Reiki, shamanic healing, and yoga, and meditation, like mindset meditation and things like that, guided meditations. And you will find your way. You're listening to these words because you brought yourself to this awareness. We are the same oneness. We are all the same divine oneness. And the divine oneness in me, like that word namaste, the God in me bows to the God in you. I acknowledge the God in you as well. And the divine in me, whatever you want to call it, there's a saw going off on the background. I'll just acknowledge it. So, it is what it is. What exists in me is exactly the same thing that exists in you. And the same thing that exists in the Einsteins and the, I don't know who else, the Mahatma Gandhis and the Desmond Tutus or whatever. Like, there's like whoever, I don't know, whatever, name a sage. Sun Tzu, whatever. What lived in them also lives in you. We are all oneness. And remember always that you are the infinite divine energy that creates worlds, living for a moment in a human vessel of consciousness. That you are the bulb. You are not the bulb. You are the light that illuminates it. When you think about that for a moment, think about it. You are the light that animates the bulb. Therefore, the bulb helps you to move through the experiences of your life, and you experience it through the senses that you have. But that vessel, just like your car, does not define what you can or cannot do. It's just the vehicle that carries you there. You are the light that illuminates the bulb, and that light is infinite. Infinite power, infinite love, infinite possibility. Thank you so much for listening. And may all that the divine oneness that we are, may all that it holds in its infinitely, unconditionally loving heart for you come true. That you live your dreams to the fullest, beyond what your wildest dreams or even the ability to imagine, in truly miraculous ways. May it all come true so far beyond anything you could ever dream or imagine, in truly miraculous ways.